Hey, what's going on guys? Arekkz here. Welcome back to another video for Monster Hunter Rise, and this time we're taking a look at the trailer from the perspective of armor and weapons. If you look at both the trailer and the extended gameplay in the Monster Hunter Direct, we get a look at some of the armor sets for the newly revealed monsters, we get to look at some of the base weapons, and we get a look at a couple of additional armor sets, which of course confirm the return of a couple of additional monsters. So, I did the same kind of thing for World, where we kind of break down any of these sets anytime they're revealed, so that's what we're doing today. So if you do enjoy this, a like would be super appreciated. Comment down below, let me know what you guys think of these, and also let me know what monsters you hope to see next, like on the kind of returning roster. But let's not waste any time and let's begin. Of course, the very first armor set we see is the starter set. This is the one that I would assume we will begin the game with. Much like in Portable Third, you had the Yukumo set. In Iceborne, we have the Direwolf set. You always have that typical thematically matching armor set that you begin the game with, and this, of course, matches the theme of the village. Honestly, I really like this one. I especially love the sort of flowing scarf on the back of it, and it kind of goes so nicely in this game, given that it's all about movement and jumping and mobility. Anytime you're darting through the sky, you see those sort of flailing behind the character. Looks really cool, so that much I do like a lot. We of course get a look at it in various different gameplay clips, but this one here is worth calling out because this is also what I'm going to assume is this game's version of the Iron Gun Lance. You'll notice that this shield, in terms of shape, appears in like a number of different weapons. We see the charge blade with it, we see the sword and shield with it, so I'm going to guess that this is probably this game's version of iron weapons. Don't forget that in the story, Kamurai Village is known for its Tatara steel, so these are probably, if we have to name them, Tatara steel weapons. The next clip, we of course turn our attention to one of the wirebug attacks. This is a hunter fighting off against an Aknosom, but the hunter is wearing Tetranodon armor and wielding a Tetranodon charge blade, or at least that is my assumption. Keep in mind at this stage none of this has been officially confirmed, but when you look at Monster Hunter trailers historically, they will typically reveal new monsters and then you'll see the hunters wearing said armor when they're fighting. So the fact that they've shown 4 new monsters and we see 4 different armor sets in this video kind of goes to show that, you can at least sort of pair them together. So this is, I'm like 99.9% sure, Tetranodon armor with a Tetranodon charge blade, which I definitely like a lot. I think of all the new monsters revealed, short of Magnamalo, who is clearly obviously a favorite. I mean, they always design flagships just to look badass. I do think Tetranodon is one of my new favorite monsters. Following on from there, we then have the armor set for the Great Izuchi, which of course is the, I guess this game's equivalent of the Jaggi. Now this one is definitely a match because obviously you can compare the color scheme, it lines up quite nicely, and also it's worth noting, again, you look back historically at different Monster Hunter games, any of those Jaggi style monsters, those kind of bird wyverns that you fight early on, all their armor sets tend to have a very sort of typical identifiable theme to them. They're all those kind of starter sets that, they look cool, but they're also, if you were to line them all up side by side, there would definitely be some kind of comparisons that can be made. So this is Great Izuchi armor. Following on from there, by process of elimination, we then have the armor set for Aknosom. This one actually is quite interesting, especially if you look at the side by side with the bird. I probably would have thought that it would have had, say, more feathers on it, but when you look at the color scheme, and when you look at the fact that the description behind the bird focuses around its sort of like central eye, especially if you look on the switch axe that this hunter is using, this also appears to be the switch axe from that monster, and I'm making that assumption partly based on the fact that the color scheme matches, but also based on the fact that when it attacks in sword mode, we see fire coming out, and we know that Aknosom can throw out fiery bursts. So this is, again, pretty certain to be Aknosom armor, which looks quite cool. It's kind of almost got that knight look to it, so I do quite like that one a lot. And of course, jumping back to the sword and shield, this is once again going to be this game's version of the iron weapons, which, as I've already stated, I'm assuming is the Tatara steel. So again, if they have to be named, I'm going to call these the Tatara steel weapons. If we then jump over to the gameplay clip from when they were speaking about the different configurations of, say, Palicos and Palamutes, we actually get to look at a character again in the regular starting gear with a Tatara steel longsword, and we get to see the Palamute on the left with the Tetranodon armor and the Palamute on the right with the bog standard starter armor. We then switch over to the next scene, we can see the Palico in the Great Izuchi armor and the Palico on the left again in the starter gear. And we then jump over to a group shot where, admittedly, this one is a little bit dark, but if you look at it in the distance, you can of course see on the far right, we have the female hunter in the Aknosom gear with the Aknosom Palico. In the middle, we have the male hunter with that Tetranodon armor and the Tetranodon Palico. We have the regular armor set in the middle, and on the far left, we of course have the Great Izuchi armor again. As for the other two scenes, when of course we get to see this hunter fighting against Aknosom, we of course see a female hunter wearing Rathian armor with the Rathian switch axe, so that of course confirms the return of Rathian. And meanwhile, when we look over to the clip of the hunter using the bow, we have the hunter in Rathalos gear, and then there's also this other clip of the Rathalos Hunter, female hunter this time, wielding a really cool switch axe. Now, again, it's interesting because when I first saw this, it's not Tetsukabra, but Tetsukabra came to mind because if you guys cast your mind back to the Great Sword for Tetsukabra, it almost has that knife look to it. And this, you know, when it's in sword form, looks very much like, I don't know, a Japanese fish knife. So I kind of got that feel for it. But again, if you look at the symbol on it, if you actually look at the icon, it seems that any of these weapons that I'm basically calling Tatara Steel weapons, they all seem to have this icon. So I would again go as far as to assume that this is the basic quote-unquote iron or Tatara Steel switch axe. Then outside of that, we also have what I'm assuming is the alloy armor set with the Tatara Steel charge blade, again with that sort of typical, almost like shuriken shaped shield to it. I really do like that. I love the way that the sort of shields have that almost like, you know, shuriken / star look to them. So yeah, that looks pretty cool. But I'm assuming this is the game's equivalent of the alloy armor set. And then of course, finally, for one of the returning monsters, we also see the familiar Azuros armor. For those of you guys that haven't seen it before, this is what it looks like in full. And the weapons being wielded are once again the standard steel dual blades and the standard steel insect glaive. Or at least I assume. So, for the time being, that is pretty much it. Obviously, we have not seen Magnum Arlo armor because, you know, it's a flagship. I'm sure they're going to show that later on. You know, maybe we'll see it in the gameplay in TGS this weekend. Maybe we'll have to wait longer. Either way, I'm sure it's going to be incredibly cool. But for the time being, that's a rundown of all the new armor and weapons we've seen so far. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed that video. Don't forget, if you haven't already done so, you can join the Arekkz Gaming Discord. We've got an awesome community over there with so many different channels for you to chat loads of different topics and different games. I'm in there, the team's in there. If you guys want to chat with us, find people to play with, it's just in general a great place to be. And of course, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to turn on those notifications so you don't miss any of our future uploads.